just after 6:30. Eamonn and Isabel here on a Monday morning breakfast on GB News.
And this is how your Monday morning newspapers are shaping up. The Telegraph says Gary Lineker is set to return to Match of the Day this weekend as BBC bosses back down.
The Express leads on the ongoing Lineker row. It also features the PM's pledge to increase military spending by $5 billion.
And as well as Lineker, the Times is writing that the Chancellor's finalising plans for a multi-billion-pound bailout for Britain's tech industry after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank.
And here's the Star. It suggests a white Easter is on the way as a new polar blast is threatening to bring snow later this month. Okay.
I'm so fed up with the snow. It's just not right.
Today we had something a wee bit different. We had wind.
Oh, I hate the wind even more.
Not a lot of wind about, so there's a lot of wind this morning. Go through the newspapers in more detail. We have got Dawn Neeson and we have got broadcaster and podcaster Mr. Sean McDonald. Dawn, Gary Lineker. Right.
Yes.
Do you now? You know you're a big football fan.
I am.
You know you're football, West Ham supporter.
And we're still talking about Gary Lineker, aren't we? 4 days solid, we're talking about Gary Lineker. It's quite incredible that a sports presenter.
Here's the thing: the figures, as I thought would happen for Match of the Day on Saturday night, were up by 500,000.
They were up by 500,000.
That was just people tuning in to see what all the fuss was about. There's nothing sustainable in that.
Was it? I wonder, Isabel, because I actually watched it and enjoyed it more without being given lectures on, you know, whether this was offside, whether this was onside, who did what. It was just quite good just to watch the football. And who was it? Brian Clough gave a brilliant interview back in the day when they first started all this punditry, going, I just want to see the football, I just want to see the goals, I don't want anyone or no goals in your case this weekend, Eamonn, sorry. Sorry, we only got one. But he gave this interview saying, I just don't want the analysis that goes with it, I just want to watch the game. And I think a lot of football fans were tuning in and saying, oh, it's quite nice just actually being able to watch.
Says the man who was one of the best analysers ever.
Yes, indeed. No, this is true. That is true. But, I mean, it has got a bit involved, and the fact that the programme was down to 20 minutes for an hour and 10 minutes is interesting. But this is the fact that Tim Davie, who's the Director General of the BBC, literally flew back personally to negotiate what the hell was going on.
So he literally wet his pants.
He absolutely
Sean,
did.
this is what I don't understand. I mean, listen, I would love to hold GB News and everybody I ever worked for to ransom, but you realise at the end of the day, you are replaceable.
Eamonn, surely not.
Well,
surely not.
Come on now.
But why does the BBC think that Gary is not replaceable? Bearing in mind you hear Dawn as a football fan saying she quite preferred just seeing the action.
I don't think it's so much a case of Gary Lineker not being replaceable, because everybody is, but I think it would then be the consequences and ramifications of him leaving. The backlash, as we've already seen, you know, people standing in solidarity and support, quite rightly in my opinion, because you can't have the government or the BBC censoring people just because it's critical of the government. So I think that's what the issue would be, and I think they've definitely realised that. They've panicked. You know, it's like a bomb going off in their hands, and they've had to dial it back. So I think long term, for the sustainability and continuation of the BBC, then you're going to have Gary Lineker still there, or else it's going to have bigger problems.
I think the issue with this, I mean, sort of like slightly disagree with you, Sean. The issue with this isn't about what Gary said, what Suella Braverman said, because the language used in both cases was inflammatory and unnecessary, so they were both in the wrong. But the actual issue is one person's contract with the company he works for. That's the bottom line. That is all this is about, really. And the BBC actually poured fuel on this issue. It needn't have got it on every single newspaper, every single one today. And for a story to cover everything from the Guardian to the Mail, it's almost unheard of.
I think the BBC have done more harm to their own reputation than Gary Lineker certainly ever did, and it never needed to be like this. But
BBC
the question
were
is,
under political pressure.
Do Richard Sharp and Tim Davie need to potentially lose their jobs over the mishandling of this?
Well, I've seen Rishi Sunak today basically refusing to back Sharp and saying he wasn't my appointment, he was already there from a predecessor, and that there's now, I think, a case he's leading a review as to the suitability, which, I mean, not a very suitable appointment, was it? We don't have to kind of go over that one again. So yeah, it's blown up in their faces. I think they've either succumbed, as Eamonn saying, they succumbed to political pressure or a fear of number 10, whatever it may be. I don't know why they're so scared of number 10. They've only got a year left to go with the current PM that's in there, and I think they've really dropped the ball. But then he owed his wee pal Boris Johnson a favour, didn't he? And it's blown up in his face.
But you see, Am I unique from the point of view that I would look at and say, well, Gary Lineker, that's your view, that's fair enough. I don't have to agree with you, but I respect your right to have that particular...
Of course, absolutely. But the problem is, does his contract, whether he's a freelance employer or not, and that's a grey area, and Gary Lineker is actually in court over a tax issue, debating this issue, isn't he? So did his contract actually say that he should not put political opinions out because he is representing...
Well, the BBC Charter says that, and he works for the BBC.
So he set his own precedent.
Go on.
So apologies for interrupting. He set his own precedent because he's obviously a very vocal political commentator. It's not as if he's never passed comment before, and I think the BBC have set their own precedent. Andrew Neil, while working at the BBC, was editor of the right-wing publication The Spectator.
This is the problem they've got, Sean, is that the sheer hypocrisy where they appear to be targeting Gary Lineker for his left-wing, in inverted commas, views, whereas other commentators on there, who often work on political programmes and news programmes, are allowed to have their opinions.
Yeah.
So it's the...
Alan Sugar was on the front page of The Sun.
Exactly.
And
And also, let's not forget, whilst he was doing his job at Match of the Day, he issued a lecture on the politics of Qatar during the World Cup. And if that wasn't in breach of the editorial guidelines,
well,
then I don't know what it is.
But there is actually, the rules were rewritten in 2020 by Tim Davie himself oversaw them, and that actually included a Lineker clause which stated high-profile presenters had additional responsibility to avoid taking sides on party political issues. So it seems a clear breach of his contract, which is the bottom line.
What I'm asking both of you, Sean, first of all, is this an outdated idea, the fact that you should be taught how to think by the BBC?
I think the BBC, one of their sort of pillars of their existence is impartiality and not getting involved, as a public broadcaster. I don't think it's a bad thing for them to insist upon impartiality for the presenters and contributors, but
if you work,
they have to.
You're an actor.
They have to administer their own rules properly, and they haven't done that. And I think that is what the furore has come from.
I was reading over the weekend. Sorry, Dawn, we'll come and get your assessment, final thought on that as well. But I just wanted to interject because I was reading from a former creator of the BBC's own editorial guidelines over the weekend.
I read
tweeting. Yeah, and he was saying that this was considered a particularly low-risk case, and it is specifically accounted for within the guidelines because his area of opinion did not overlap with his area of work, and therefore it wasn't at high risk of affecting the impartiality of the BBC. It's actually in black and white.
Well, as I said, the problem the BBC have got is if you read their guidelines, and we don't actually know, none of us know what Gary Lineker's personal contract says. We know it says he's paid a lot of money, but we don't know what it actually says. So the problem is the very grey area about the social media clause in the guidelines and in Gary Lineker's contract in particular, and how it is applied to Lineker and to other presenters. It's a very, very grey area. But basically, the fact that it's blown out of this incredible push distracts him from the real issue is that 45,000 people crossed that channel. Many of them died, or some of them died last year, and that's what this should be about.
And that's what the Prime Minister's been saying. It's really frustrating.
To be fair to Rishi Sunak,
calling for perspective and all of this. What else has the Prime Minister been saying, Sean? He's over in San Diego. He's been on the plane in one of those giant huddles surrounded by journalists.
Yeah, I saw that photograph. I don't know if we have the graphic there, but I was studying it thinking, are they on an aeroplane? And he's given this press conference. He is in San Diego. He's for talks with Joe Biden, the US President, and Anthony Albanese, the Australian Premier, and he's announced a £5 billion increase in national spending, in his words, to fortify national defences to be delivered over the next 2 years. Excuse me. This is very important for a number of reasons. We have British munitions stockpiles have been depleted as a result of donations to Ukraine. It's very important for national security and crucial to economic security, and as we've seen, technology supply chains. But it's not without its criticism. We have Tobias Ellwood, the chairman of the Defence Select Committee, who's warning that this will be music to the ears of Moscow and Beijing, because we're actually underspending. He's likened it to the failure to rearm properly in the 1930s. So.
Talk about spending. Here's another story that you've taken from the Times, front page of the Times, and it's, we're covering it today. The Treasury scrambling to protect tech firms after this bank collapse.
Yeah, this is...
Why are they getting their knickers in a twist about this?
Yeah, this is a very serious one. So we have Silicon Valley Bank. They are a tech industry finance company, bank. They help to finance tech companies. More than 3,000 British tech companies have around £7 billion in deposits with the bank's UK subsidiary. Now, after its collapse, that poses a major threat, as we saw the sort of first domino that fell in, I think it was 2008, 2007 with Northern Rock. That can go on to have calamitous consequences, so it's imperative that some sort of resolution is found to protect these companies, because they could be forced into voluntary liquidation, and that can have a disastrous ripple effect.
Yeah, we're keeping a close eye on any possible announcements from the Chancellor this morning, because we know that they need to act very, very quickly. They've been in talks all weekend, haven't they? Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, Rishi Sunak himself said to be under the bonnet on this one as well. And of course, it is budget week. The timing couldn't be worse, really, to have to do a giant bailout. Talking of funding, I thought actually this is where you were going a minute ago. We're talking about this bailout, but actually, Dawn, you've chosen this story, the funding of Rishi Sunak's brand new swimming pool.
I know, this is lovely. This is the front page of The Guardian. Obviously, not Rishi Sunak's biggest fan. And they have got a story saying that Rishi Sunak has upgraded his huge swimming pool, which is 40 foot, evidently, in his constituency home up in North Yorkshire. And it uses so much energy that the local electricity network had to be upgraded to meet its power demands, which is, it's all a bit sort of like, rich envy, typical Guardian stuff. However, the serious point is that in deprived areas, 400 swimming pools have been shut down. And even in Rishi Sunak's local area, the local pool is saying we are having to restrict access and restrict times that people can go swimming because we can't afford to run it because of the heating bills and costs.
Talking about all the public pools.
The public swimming pools, Eamonn, which are the important ones. I mean, as a kid, swimming was my sport. We used to go to the local pool religiously at ridiculous times in the day to do training with my dad. And if it hadn't been for the public swimming pools, that wouldn't have happened. And so many local authority pools have had to shut down because of the cost of living crisis. It's just really unfair. It's just certainly not reading the room, unless he obviously invites the local kids in to join the pool.
So as someone that has to take their kids swimming quite often, public swimming pools are so grim in this day and age. And when I was growing up, they were investing so much money in them. I remember brand new ones being built in my area, several of them, none of which feel like they've had any investment in for years. We should stress, though, in this instance, Rishi Sunak being a billionaire, he's paid for all of this himself. There's no cost to the taxpayer, which I think is important to underline.
The question therein becomes, why can the British Prime Minister afford a 40-foot swimming pool, and to upgrade is, I know he's going to be well off, but he shouldn't be that well off.
Well, he's a billionaire.
Yeah, so it's okay, why do we have a billionaire as Prime Minister then, would be my question.
Well, exactly. Do you not think it's good that someone who's incredibly wealthy actually decides to continue to be a public servant?
I don't believe that that is his sole reason, that's his sole aim personally. I think a lot of people would echo that view. I just don't. I think it's not reflective of wider society. How can you have someone who's a billionaire acting in the best interests when he's never lived a day in the life of my shoes or yours?
So we say somebody on the national income salary in this country, which is like £30,000 a year, should be Prime Minister. Only people representing the majority of the people should be Prime Minister.
No, I don't think somebody on on the lowest end of the wage scale, but it's something that I always have to express. I just don't see how a billionaire can be properly representative of the UK when they're in a completely different stratosphere.
Okay, let us know your views at home. I'm sure that will divide.
When I was a child, roads in Northern Ireland were superb. Absolutely superb. And the reason you'd notice the difference, because you'd cross the border and you get to the Republic of Ireland and you went back 30 or 40 years. Then the European Union came along and they got all this money for bridges and roads and everything, and their roads became fantastic in the Republic of Ireland. And ours went downhill, downhill, downhill. So in the Mail, Sean, we're talking about potholes, right?
Yes, so the Daily Mail there are lauding it as their victorious campaign, and they've got Jeremy Hunt pledging £200 million into the war on potholes. Potholes are terrible, especially in Glasgow where I would drive around. They are absolutely shocking. I think it is a very important issue, to be honest. I've had about 2 punctures. It's about time something's done about it. Time will tell if it'll actually be delivered. I hope it will be. I'm very, very doubtful.
See, Sean, I go through the technology. They just have not got the technology right as to how they do. And also, private utility companies, you repair a road, somebody comes along, digs it up, puts cables down, repairs it in the most awful patchwork type way, but they still have not got the technology right as to how they should fill these holes.
Absolutely. Do you know, actually, round about Ibrox Stadium in Glasgow is a really bad point. They repaired it. They closed the road for a week. You could see about 4 layers of concrete where it had been done over time. You could see cables. They closed the roads for a week, caused chaos. I swear to God, within 1 week, the potholes were back. And you think, so you've caused chaos for a week, you've shut everything down, and then they're back again.
Hands up if you've ever been out filling potholes.
Rod Stewart infamously did it in his local road.
I had to do it. I did a VT. It's one of my earliest jobs in journalism, and I got a golf. What do you call it? Golf stick? Golf
club.
Club, that's the badger. And I was teeing up on the road and trying to score goals. Holes. Anyway, it's a long time ago. I'm not a golfer.
But BBC, if you want a replacement for Gary Lineker talking sports, we have the perfect
I'm
solution.
all over my sport. But actually, the state of the roads and actually seeing how they filled them, the process of just filling a hole just actually made the access for the water greater, which meant that expansion and contraction and cracks made it worse. Just to give you a little sproddy intake.
And also, I don't buy all this, there's £200 million to solve the road problem. That's nothing.
That's nothing. I mean, that wouldn't even cover one county's pothole problem.
It's like 100 houses in London. If that. And it's just ridiculous. So stop trying to make out that that's the end of the problem, because it ain't. Dawn,
yes, Eamonn.
Looking ahead to Easter.
Yes, Eamonn. Linked to potholes, because actually, as Isabel just very neatly explained, the freezing and the thawing actually causes potholes. But Easter is going to be a white Easter. Baltic Britain facing a white Easter. Freezing. It's a bit warm at the moment, warm and windy at the moment, but freezing conditions are back and predicted until mid-April, which means your Easter eggs won't be melting. You're lucky there. With temperatures in northern England predicted to drop to a brutal -14. Gosh. That's lovely, isn't it? Something to look forward to and cheer you all up on a Monday morning.
Well, it's the weather. It's the weather.
That's a very important story, Amy.
It is. It's the front of the
star,
Dawn.
Did you see any of the Oscar films?
I haven't, no. I'm going to watch them now, though.
The one that
Haven't seen any. I haven't been to the pictures since COVID. I feel as if there's been hardly anything out.
I just watched Elvis at home.
Elvis was great. You actually need to see that on the big screen, though, with the impact of the music.
It is amazing. I mean, the last movie I went to see was Plane with Gerard Butler, the Glaswegian actor in it, and very good it was. Is there a mention of Plane? No. Top Gun there got best sound. Yeah, they think, we have it in, so we'll have to give it something. I mean, there's something, the Batman, that's like 3 hours of your life you'll never get back again. Absolutely horrendous.
How many of us are actually excited about the Oscars this year? Amy and I were just reflecting. We've done many morning after the night befores over our time together, haven't we?
Have you seen
And it's always led the news, and it's been a huge deal, and it's just, no one's seen the films, no one's that bothered.
They always give Oscars to films we've never seen.
Did you see the clip of Hugh Grant being interviewed?
I've seen the quote.
He could not be more disinterested. He's been asked questions, sort of cheesy filler questions, and he's gone, I don't really care. Who's the suit? And he's like, mine.
Too cool for school.
That's
the one I did like was the music one. Just quickly though, Eamonn, sorry. The best song. I watched that clip this morning, and the dance routine is amazing. It's from an Indian film. It's just brilliant.
What's it from? What film?
Sound is Top Gun Maverick. Original song Natu Natu from RRR.
Oh, yeah, but watch the dance routine, Isabel. It's amazing. Really brilliant.
It's an Indian film, I'm told.
Right,